Hello everyone, welcome to another Friday Flashback review here on the CC Network. I'm Fred, your reliable host as always, ready to take you back in time and look at a wrestling event from the past and see how it shapes up today. This time, we're looking at an event deep-rooted into the Attitude Era, the 1999 edition of the King of the Ring. Now, this review is requested by a good friend of mine, Tom Sweck, the creator and writer of arguably two of my favourite webcomics, Alone in a Crowd and The Sequential Adventures of Chelsea and Millie, which you both can check out in the description box if you haven't read them already. He was a wrestling fan on and off since the Attitude Era and actually attended this event, if you can believe it, as did good mic work. Of course, if that seat picture he put up on Twitter about a week ago is no mistake. Anyway, this event was shrouded in controversy thanks to the tragic events of Over the Edge the month prior, when Owen Hart fell to his death on that very show, which made the Undertaker title victory in the main event mean absolutely nothing. Obviously. So the WWF had to show after Rory's Owen that they could pick themselves up with this event and move forward after such tragic circumstances. And looking at this event on paper, it doesn't look too bad, with the Rock vs Taker title match, the penultimate pay-per-view match in the Austin McMahon rivalry, and the members of DX running roughshod over the King of the Ring eponymous tournament in the quarterfinal stage. It all sounds pretty good, but tournament-style pay-per-views do not go over well with me, so inevitably I look at it and think it has a potential to do well, but we're going to have to wait and see. Then again, there's one thing that even if this pay-per-view could salvage reputations, it couldn't salvage the lack of pictures that I couldn't find for this review. So if you normally just sit back and watch this video, don't really take mind to it. You're better off just sticking it in a tab and just going about your web business, because honestly, that's what these audio reviews are designed for. You can just sit back, listen, and you won't really miss a thing. But if you want to check out my ratings for each of these matches in terms of psychology and all the match ratings and everything like that, you'll have to keep looking at the screen regardless. So hopefully all should be good. The WWF King of the Ring 1999 took place on June the 27th, 1999 at the Greensboro Coliseum in where else but Greensboro, North Carolina, with a phenomenal 19,761 people turning out for it, which for a venue that holds 23,000 minus a stage is pretty impressive, I've got to say. And this arena held Unforgiven 1998 and would be the host for the finale of the Invasion storyline Survivor Series 2001 just over 2 years later. And while the WWE hasn't returned to this venue for a pay-per-view since, they have had consistent Raw and SmackDown events in subsequent years, most recently in 2014. Now, the Coliseum is also known for hosting many NWA and WCW events, with 4 Starcades, from 83 to 86, the 1990 Wrestle War, and the July 86 version of the Great American Bash, where Dusty Rhodes defeated Ric Flair inside a cage to finally win the NWA World title after failing to do so at some of those previously mentioned Starcades. This is a King of the Ring, an illustrious event paired with an illustrious wrestling venue with a good history. So, therefore, the question I have to ask, again, is can this event live up to lofty expectations? There's only one way to find out. Let's get on with the review. We start out with, obviously, the first match of the King of the Ring tournament quarterfinals, with X-Pac taking on Hardcore Holly, the newly christened Hardcore Holly, I might add. Now, X-Pac defeated the Big Boss Man, and Holly defeated Al Snow, both in pretty quick fashion, to earn this right to open out the card. Now, X-Pac got a massive pop upon entering, so you can tell exactly where this match is going to be going on that alone. Well, it didn't go in the exact direction I thought it would, but nonetheless we got the same winner we all hoped for, as X-Pac defeated Holly off a DQ to advance in a paltry 3 minutes and 2 seconds. Now, without question, this match earned the title of Worst Match of the Night, which honestly, when you look at the rest of these matches, isn't quite as surprising as you may think. The match itself ended really before it got a chance to get going, especially considering how X-Pac was keeping pace with the hard-hitting Alabaman, which got the crowd relatively interested. And the DQ finish, it felt incredibly forced. While it did manage to work with Holly's new no-nonsense, no BS attitude to give some psychology to it, it added pretty much nothing else. And while the crowd were happy that their main man won, the match really didn't get a chance to escape my wrath. And I was going to be kind, giving the little it did to give my attention a 1/4 of a star, but upon reflection, it doesn't really deserve it, and it gets a 0. Yeah, the first match of the night is a throwaway 0. Not the best way to kick things off, but let's hope that the rest of these matches give me something to talk about, because I do not want to have to go through this not really caring, but we're going to have to find out. And the good thing is, we don't have to wait very long. In the next King of the Ring quarterfinal, we have Kane taking on The Big Show, who both defeated Droz and Test respectively to make it to the event. I believe, as well, if I am not mistaken, this was the first time that these two giants had ever faced on pay-per-view, which makes it historic in its own right. Now, in this battle of the big men, Kane defeated Big Show thanks to help from a steel chair and Hardcore Holly in 6 minutes and 36 seconds to advance. Now, I wasn't expecting much from this match, as you can tell, because look at the two men involved, for God's sake. In my reputation of reviewing their matches nowadays, you can kind of understand why. But to my surprise, I actually found this to be an entertaining match to some degree. Now, while Big Show kept momentum in his corner for the majority of the match, the few big moves by Kane allowed it to go on without really becoming lumbersome and boring. Hardcore Holly's involvement to exact revenge on Big Show for nearly dropping a car on him a few weeks prior made the crowd really get invested into it, as the former WCW star, in a WCW territory mind you, got willed on as Kane regained control, which subsequently actually turned the crowd against it. So inevitably they were not in Kane's corner for this one, and it kind of killed the latter stages of the match, which wasn't a nice thing to see. Now, while this match did last just enough time for it to be satisfactory, without Hardcore Holly's involvement and the surprisingly fast pace that the Big Show kept throughout with Kane, it really wouldn't be much of a good match to look at, to be honest. And honestly, if the crowd weren't as hot as they were, thanks to Kane and Big Show in their prime proving their worth as agile big men, this match could have gotten way lower. Well, there we go. I will give all three men and the referee that nearly got decapitated by Big Show's boot for putting on an entertaining match. They did pretty good here. It had some substance, and I wasn't expecting it. And for that, I'm going to be giving it a respectful 1.5 star. Yeah, I found this to be quite entertaining, and I bet no one saw this coming. Especially considering that Dave Meltzer gave it a -0.5 star rating. Kind of shows how much he knows, right? It all factors in, and that's a lot better than the opener, that's for sure. We steam right along with the King of the Ring quarterfinal third match, seeing the newly christened Mr. Ass taking on Ken Shamrock, who both defeated Viscera and Jeff Jarrett respectively in quick matches to earn an interesting match here. Now, Shamrock had already wrestled on Sunday Night Heat against Shane McMahon earlier on, but was brutally assaulted in the chest with some kendo sticks and his amazing jam-fast swings by Steve Blackman. Therefore, his body wasn't in the best of shape to face this match later on in the evening, but he decided to do so anyway because the man has massive balls. And he did so after being called a horse's ass by Gunn. Yeah, coming from a guy who says that he loves to lick him, kick him, and everything else in between in his theme song, I find that to be quite hysterical. Unsurprisingly though, Mr. Ass defeated Shamrock in convincing fashion in 3 minutes and 37 seconds to advance to the semi-finals. Now, this match was pretty much nothing, as Billy Gunn got no response. Let me repeat myself, no response from the crowd, and it was leading things at a very slow pace to bore them and myself even more. But thankfully, this match had one saving grace, and it was the psychology, because Billy Gunn focused pretty much his entire offense on the back and the chest of Shamrock, and of course those injured ribs. When Shamrock, he sold like a boss, which meant inevitably by the time the match ended with blood coming out of his mouth from a famouser, yeah, you could pretty much tell that this was going to be a little better than the standard boring slow-paced match we would get in these kind of situations. And the thing is, if it wasn't for that psychology and great storytelling, it would have gotten a 0 flat out. But luckily, I'm in a good mood, a good enough mood to offer it 0.5 star. Yeah, was it worth Shamrock spitting out blood and causing internal damage to himself at the end? No. Did it really do its job of putting heat on Billy Gunn to go forward? Not really, because the crowd didn't care, but I can admit it did its job of providing some worth to a match that could have had absolutely nothing. And that counts for something, right? Now, we've reached the final quarterfinal King of the Ring match, and we have Road Dogg taking on Chyna. And this one should be interesting, as Triple H was meant to be in the tournament, but gave his place to Chyna so he could focus on going for the WWF Championship, which he was named the new #1 contender of. Surprisingly. Now, Chyna proceeded to beat Val Venus, while her former DX cohort Road Dogg defeated the Godfather to set up this mixed gender match. Now, one thing you can immediately say so far is these matches haven't lasted very long. Well, here is a little bit of a surprise. Road Dogg defeated Chyna in 13 minutes and 19 seconds to advance into the semi-finals. And the thing is, unlike every match we've had so far, as I've highlighted, this one took its time, which made me very happy, which meant story had a natural chance to come through, as it was a slow, painful dissection by Chyna, willing the crowd on to be rewarded for their patience, allowing for the story of the match to build naturally, so when it hit its climax, they went absolutely batshit. And you can tell because Road Dogg was over as hell throughout, so when he barely managed to fight back, the North Carolinians responded with absolute virtuistic gusto. It was great. And I will also credit Chyna here, because she did something that I'm pretty surprised that not many wrestlers actually do in their matches, which is target one body part throughout, and in this case, Dogg's neck and head, which was done with every single move that Chyna threw at him, from sleeper holds to forearms, hard Irish whips into the turnbuckle, and to knee drops. While it won't win much with the move expertise on my end, it told a great story as that head was being wore down constantly, so when Road Dogg managed to counter a sleeper hold into one of his own, it made it even better, thinking, oh, you can target my head? I can do even more so. And inevitably, as I've highlighted, Dogg sold it superbly, which meant inevitably as it went on, you had to will for this guy. You couldn't have him not only be beaten up by a woman who many considered to be a man in the first place, but to then have him fight back was just a brilliant underdog story that really did its job. Then, of course, you have Triple H's interference, adding even more, and you finalise it all with Shawn Michaels taking him away, and then Road Dogg using a metal cup to stop a low blow finish, and you're looking at this thinking, wow, how entertaining can this get? And what started out as a slow, turgid affair slowly blossomed into a match that was thoroughly entertaining, and while I would have liked Chyna's dominance to have paid off here, the match should have quickened earlier on, and honestly, King shouldn't have been mocking Chyna's chances of winning because she dominated. It could have gotten 3-star plus if those 3 little errors I highlighted would have been rectified. But alas, it didn't. And therefore, it has to get 2 3/4 stars, and that isn't a bad rating to get, I am sure of that. And sadly, this is the match of the night, guys. It gets downhill from here. And the thing is, it's been a week now since Chyna's death, and while that may be very sad, I am incredibly happy that I've been able to recap a match of hers that even in defeat, best showed off her qualities in the ring. She could move as quick and hit as hard as the men could, and she did it with a smile on her face, doing exactly what was necessary to build the story well, and it put a smile on my face to watch it. And Chyna, we will miss you no matter how hard your life was. You are a legend, a pioneer of this business, and we are going to miss you. And the fact we're not going to see a Hall of Fame speech from you is sad, but the one thing I can do is look back on this match and think, you know what, Chyna was pretty good. And that's not much more I need to say about that. Next, we have some tag team action, as Edge and Christian of the Brood took on the Hardy Boys for the right to be called the #1 contenders for the Acolytes WWF Tag Team Championships. And this was, if you can believe it, the first time that Edge, Christian and the Hardys all faced off on pay-per-view, and as we know, they would become a fixture of the tag team division for years to come following this. Now, this match originally took place earlier on Sunday Night Heat, but it ended in a no contest, which meant they had to promote it up to the main card so both teams could settle their differences and true #1 contenders could be found. So, yeah, an unannounced match on an Attitude Era pay-per-view. You know my opinions on unannounced matches. If you've watched my reviews long enough, you know they immediately are looked down upon by me. But let's see how it goes. After all of that palaver, the match finished with the Hardy Boys defeating Edge and Christian off a botched Gangrel interference, picking up the win in 4 minutes and 49 seconds to become the new #1 contenders. Now, while this match did come across as sloppy on occasion, thanks to its fast pace and easily switching momentum, this match came alive thanks to the future Hall of Famer in Edge, whose hard-hitting offense was honestly entertaining, enthralling, and quite sickening to watch at times, with that spear mid-poetry in motion and that top rope Alabama slam showing how stiff he worked back then. And while I also can credit Hayes and Gangrel attempting to help their teams as another factor in helping this match along, without Edge's violent moveset, I wouldn't have been as invested in this match as I inevitably was. And the crowd, they weren't really sure how to react because most of the matches so far this evening had been quite slow, not really giving too much away, so to have something wake them up like this, they were thinking, okay, what the hell? Where was this earlier on when we needed it? But they got into it upon realising that this hard-hitting action is pretty nice. They liked it, so they got behind it ever so slowly. This was a solid back-and-forth tag match, with the extras really helping it to a little higher than I anticipated, and it gets a 1 1/4 star, and I felt, okay, it needed to slow itself down and cool off after the ending of Road Dogg vs. China to get the right environment, but hell, I would have even liked the Acolytes interfering and it would have helped. But thankfully they kept themselves out of it to make this match flow a little better. Anyway, both teams in this match, while they delivered an alright match, hadn't properly gelled yet, but we'd only have to wait 4 months for these two teams to produce magic at No Mercy. And the thing is, this is the match that they got their first break, so I can give them some plaudits for trying in a position on the card which seemed very dead at that point. And they did okay. 1 1/4 star ain't bad. Let's just hope we can continue because these last 2 matches have been alright. Let's keep going. We now reach the first semi-final match of the King of the Ring, with Mr. Ass taking on Kane. And Mr. Ass defeated Kane thanks to interference from the Big Show in 5 minutes and 25 seconds to advance. Now, for the second time tonight, a match featuring Billy Gunn doesn't have much to talk about. In saying that though, Gunn looked unusually strong here, showing wherewithal to respond to Kane's desire to bash his face in with the steps and take control in what was actually a fast-paced match considering the 2 men involved here, which the crowd still didn't like. They didn't like Kane for what happened earlier, they didn't like Billy Gunn for just being Billy Gunn. I don't really have to say much there. The involvement of Big Show in the chair robbed us of an even contest, which considering the time it got, could have been given more to mature. And considering almost all of the matches here tonight, I would have liked Billy Gunn to have been challenged here. Alas, having Big Show do the dirty work for him ended up doing the job, giving more psychology, which is always a good thing. I've also got to give credit for Kane for hitting a fucking dropkick. Seriously! Kane doing a dropkick back then? Damn. Anyway, just like Gunn's earlier match, this semi-final was pretty much a 0 outside of a small amount of psychological goodies, but put it on Edge where it rightfully should be. It gets a very fortunate, again, half a star rating. Mr. Ass, you are walking on eggshells with me here, because I'm not that impressed. Let's hope your performance in the final can save your reputation over this entire event. And following that, we're going to find out who his opponent is in the second semi-final matchup, pitting X-Pac against fellow DX cohort Road Dogg, who both still respect each other as the backstage promos highlighted. Now, unsurprisingly, X-Pac defeated Road Dogg to advance in 3 minutes and 8 seconds. While both men did a fantastic job at selling neck and head injuries from their prior encounters, it's of no surprise to me that this one went as short as it did, because all it would take is one big hit to get the win all but assured. X-Pac did a decent job of aiming for that head and sold his own shoulder upon missing the Bronco Buster, which I have to admit, through not highlighting this earlier, that King had been referring to it as Shane's move following back to their rivalry at WrestleMania 15 earlier in the year, which, combined with the mutual crowd respect for both men and an aggressively quick pace, did manage to deliver something. But all in all, it wasn't enough from a match that I hoped delivered a lot more. It's not a 0, but you'd be surprised how many matches that I would have given that rating for the same amount of stuff here tonight. Nonetheless, it is the bare minimum of a quarter-star match. Now, that is quite disappointing, isn't it? I hope the final between X-Pac and Mr. Ass can deliver much, much more. Next, we have the semi-main title bout, as The Rock faces the incumbent champion, The Undertaker. Now, as I had alluded to earlier on, The Undertaker defeated Stone Cold Steve Austin in a controversial finish to a match at Over the Edge to win the WWF Championship for the 4th time in his career. The Rock defeated Triple H that night earlier on to increase his prominence in title proceedings, and after being tombstoned on a chair by the Dead Man, he challenged the leader of the corporate ministry to a match at the King of the Ring, which Vince, of course being revealed to be the higher power during this time, of course, who could forget that, would only allow The Rock to get the match he wanted if he beat The Undertaker and Triple H in a triple threat match on Raw, which thanks to China inadvertently distracting Taker, led to a rock bottom to Triple H to get the Brahma Bull the win, allowing this grudge match to go down. And not only that, the winner of this match would face Triple H, as I stated earlier on, at an undisclosed date. Lord knows when that would be. And after a hard-fought and physical match, Undertaker defeated The Rock thanks to assistance from Paul Bearer and Triple H in 19 minutes and 10 seconds, the longest match of the evening, if you can believe it, to retain the WWF Championship. Now, where do I really start with this one? Seriously, this match began with an explosive ref bump, finishes and all the like, and it ended with interference and chloroform. Now, it was as random as it was interesting, and while I will give Taker, Bearer, Rock and Triple H for bookending this match with sports entertainment gold, the middle of this match, showcasing Rock's endurance and ability to fight back from Taker's hard-hitting offense, was a snooze fest for the most part. Outside of the occasional near fall and near constant Rocky chants, nothing of note really happened, segueing from rest holds to brawling of very little substance. The crowd were loving it, the crowd were, but I sure wasn't. And to have The Rock fight back so easily, with momentum shifting constantly, it was irritating, and while I will give credit for this match for stretching out nearly 20 minutes, the mediated pacing went along with it and almost ruined it outright. Thankfully, Taker and Rock weaved a decent story out of it with Bearer's constant interference, the ref bumps, Rock's selling of the offense, and did its job to make a match that I had issues with feel much better as a watching experience. It was a match that felt much more aggressive than one that a 3-week build would attest to. I will give it some credit, inevitably, but I at least had an interesting match that left for more storyline growth. Seriously, the ending of this match meant that Rock would want Taker's ass, and inevitably, that's all you can really ask for going forward, can you? If it did its job, really, and providing thrills amongst some spills, I can happily give this match a decent average rating of 2.5 stars, and while I may seem quite critical of this match, the crowd's loud volume, the substantial length, and the subtle storytelling did enough for me. And after all, for me, that's all it can take to really make a match something. You don't need flips, kicks, and automobiles to really bring a match to life. It doesn't need much, everybody, and sometimes I feel a lot of wrestling fans today miss that. So 2.5 stars for a match that didn't have much going on? That's a very good thing to say. Now we've made it to the final of the King of the Ring tournament with X-Pac taking on Mr. Ass. As you can see on the screen in the one lone picture that I did manage to find amongst a bunch of rubbish TV shots, Mr. Ass defeated X-Pac in 5 minutes and 33 seconds to be crowned the King of the Ring for 1999, the last of the millennium. Now, the thing is, you can understand why I've been quite angry towards Mr. Ass. Well, knowing that he won this tournament, I thought to myself going in, how? How could Billy Gunn win this tournament? Especially considering, looking back at this tournament and the time period it was in, 2 people should have won this thing. Either Chyna, based on Vince Russo's desired booking direction for her to win the title at SummerSlam, or X-Pac, on crowd reaction alone. Even looking back to my SummerSlam 98 review that I did back in the summer, this X-Pac was over. He was over with everybody. They respected his moves, they respected his charisma, they respected everything. He had the crowd in the palm of his hand. And it surprised me how WWF decided to go with Mr. Ass instead. I do not know. Because considering he barely got a whisper of a reaction from the crowd all night, and inevitably at SummerSlam and Fully Loaded was made to look like an absolute arse to put his name into context, was ridiculous, and it is really frustrating. And despite having to put Gunn over, I will give X-Pac some credit for keeping a solid pace, hitting a plancha when he really shouldn't have, and kept the crowd invested, selling the neck and shoulders to give Gunn's credit knowing that he worked that the entire way through from bell to bell. And to have X-Pac survive a normal famouser but not overcome a top rope one was simple but effective storytelling, which when combined with the swearing that both men put towards Tim White showed how much they both wanted to win. And in a match that switched momentum more than expected, it went too short to make that much of an impact, but it did enough in its time to not be a complete bore. X-Pac's head and neck was the story of the whole evening, and it was the story of his downfall here. But at least it gave this match, along with other elements, something to cheer about, I guess? It's a 1.25 star match that did more than the rest of Gunn's matches earlier on combined, which is a good thing, even if I don't agree with the match result overall. Finally, we reach the main event. Stone Cold Steve Austin taking on Vince and Shane McMahon in a ladder match to win control of the World Wrestling Federation. There's a lot to talk about here, so let's get into it. Austin, of course, was screwed over at Over the Edge as Shane McMahon counted the 3 to help the corporate ministry to its biggest success. And with Vince revealed to be the higher power, Stephanie and Linda were not very happy about this, and they decided to get revenge on their chairman by placing Stone Cold into Linda's former position of CEO, with Austin making the handicap match between Vince and that sumbitch son of his at the King of the Ring. Now, Austin ran roughshod over the offices of the WWF in Stamford, Connecticut for weeks, infamously ordering manure to be dumped in McMahon's study, which is quite funny. In retaliation, Vince made the match at the King of the Ring a ladder match, a handicap ladder match. Pretty insane. And with Shawn Michaels assisting a win over the Big Boss Man, Austin laid out the final stipulation, ensuring there would be no interference from the corporate ministry in this match. And it seemed that there would be a level playing field here. I'm going to find out in the match if that actually was the case. Now, earlier on in the evening, as noted, Shane McMahon took his father's place in a match against Ken Shamrock. Basically, corporate ministry versus the Union, gang warfare back then. You can see my point. Nonetheless, and he got his ankle royally beaten. And the thing is, it put Shane's place in this match under massive jeopardy, and Vince didn't want Shane to compete. And despite this, though, Shane said, you know what, come on, I'll do it. And Vince was told by Shawn, listen, if he can't come out, you're going to have to find a new tag partner quick. Vince came out, and yeah, he did manage to go ahead with it, getting a tag partner, that replacement being Triple H. But of course, due to Triple H's interference in the main event, he was carted out of the arena, meaning Vince was not in a good place, because Shawn was saying, you know what, you're going to have to find someone quick. Who did he pick? Steve Blackman. And I thought this was going to be quite interesting, considering what had happened. But the thing is, we have to thank GTV for Shane being exposed as sitting with the Insane Clown Posse, not injured in the slightest, and Shawn basically went out there and reinstated Shane into the match, threatening to disqualify them and give the victory to Austin if they did not comply. There were so many twists and turns building up to this match that through the entire night, I hadn't seen this event before, so it inevitably kept me guessing. Can't go wrong with that. Now, at the end of it all, of this long, protracted saga, Vince and Shane defeated Austin thanks to the briefcase being lowered by a stagehand somewhere after 17 minutes and 11 seconds of action to give the McMahons control of their company back. Now, this is a very interesting match because for one that had such high stakes and a match with so much time invested, as you could tell, are you surprised as I am that this main event fell a few bars short of its intended goal? Now, while I will give the build credit for stirring up the fans and my interest, when looking at the match, while there are some positives, there were a lot of negatives too. While the crowd were into pretty much the entire thing, they had patches during Austin's offense, they just went along and didn't really give a damn because they really wanted more, honestly. And while the pace started off quick, which was a godsend considering we had two non-wrestlers here, it quickly slowed. It really did, which didn't enthuse the crowd or myself anymore. And while the spots planned were nice ones, they were sloppily executed, making the crowd response even more muted. Austin's vigour and desire to win, combined with the creativity of his actions, did make it fun at times to watch, and the risks that both McMahons put themselves through did create some tense atmosphere befitting of a match with such magnitude, and the fact that I would give credit for Vince taking a scoop slam bump off the ladder, which was quite nice. The match seemingly failed to deliver, really, as Austin's dominance gave this match an air of predictability which, along with its finish, pretty much confirmed itself. This match did everything it could to keep the crowd interested, and while it did succeed in showing off Austin's frustration at somehow being unable to turn his dominance into victory, the thing is, I still have to question whether this match was overbooked to the point where it crippled itself. Because I believe so. Because honestly, okay, Shane took a few good creative ladder spots. Vince was scoop slammed off or pushed off through a table. You know, all this happened, but it was all okay, but nothing really sprung out as, oh my god. Even the opening entrance shot where Stone Cold pulled down all the ladders and crushed them, it looked really bad. And while the match did try, I'll give credit where it's due for that. But honestly, if it was executed better, we could be looking at a possible 3-star match here. And we don't, because it gets a 2-star match rating. And I'm disappointed, because it had me on the edge of my seat, yet I was bored at times, which means that a below-average rating can kind of be justified here. And as you can tell, as this is the main event, we have got nothing else to look at, and you can probably think, why has this taken so little time? Hey, if it was above 3 stars in any of these matches, I would have gone into play-by-play detail. Unfortunately, none of the matches tonight managed that. And you can tell by the sound of my voice right now, I'm a little disappointed. In fact, actually, I will say, a little disappointed may not even cut it. But let's get on to my final thoughts. Coming into this show, my expectations were not that high to begin with, not just in regards to the tournament-style event's reputation, but also to the stark lack of depth that this roster in the Attitude Era did actually have on the show itself. While I believed the main event matches had some weight to them in helping this card along, I can't help but express my disappointment watching this show, because it did very little to really get me intrigued. And while China vs. Road Dogg out and out surprised, and Rock vs. Taker and the McMahons vs. Austin did drum up enough interest and give enough of what I expected of them, almost all of the tournament matches, despite some sprinkles of good quality, were either too short to amount to much or had nothing substantial to offer at all. The unannounced tag match, while offering something fresh, also suffered from timing issues that inevitably plagued this card from start to finish. And when the build to the main event throughout the night proved more thrilling than most of the matches themselves, and actually the match that contributed from it, you know there are problems here. While only one match got a 0, which is a positive, most of the 10 matches on this card hovered around the 1-star barrier below and above. And the fact that only 3 matches hit around the average 2.5-star mark, none of them reached above 3 stars. It made me feel that even with its positives, this event was a wasted opportunity. It was made to look important, but it delivered mostly unspectacular bouts that, even with decent crowd reaction and some decent psychology, were bare shells of what Raw could offer weekly on television at the time. The event went in like it was building for events on Raw rather than Raw was building events for it. And no positives that I can give can sponge that negative out. While it gave me some entertainment and a few solid matches, the quality that was shown on here could not sustain itself, and its lack of depth showed. This is an Attitude Era pay-per-view, alright. Match quality suffers while throwing swerves and story into the limelight. It shouldn't have been expected anything less from me, honestly. I probably should have seen it coming. The WWF King of the Ring 1999 gets a subpar 3.5 out of 10. Now, it gets the same as Judgment Day 2002, an event that had worse matches with a lot of zeros on it, but it did have quality matches of around 3 and above stars all the way through. This had less bad matches, quote-unquote, but a mundane collection of subpar ones doesn't really stand up well against it. Now, Tom, if you were looking for a positive review, I haven't been able to give it to you here, but hopefully this will show to you and many others the Attitude Era, while it may have been fantastic at the time, isn't as fun and rosy as many fans will make it seem, especially when you're looking back on it. Honestly, I should have expected this rating, but this is what happens when you go in with an open mind. You can be expected to either be surprised or disappointed. In this case, the latter was well and truly delivered on. Well, there you have it, guys. Another Friday flashback in the can. It's been 1 month since I last did one, but I'm happy to get one done because I love making these, and I hope you guys enjoy listening and or watching as well. The thing is, it's not really now about my opinion, but it's all about yours. Did you watch this pay-per-view live back then, either in crowd or on television? Have you recently watched it and think that my opinion is utter rubbish? Or do you think you can now go watch this pay-per-view and think that my review hasn't clouded your judgment? Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear what you think. Go put your comments in the comment section below. I would gratefully appreciate it, and it'll be great to see what you think. And if you want to catch up with any other Friday Flashback reviews, the other content that this channel has regarding anime, MLP, and the rest of it, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, the Payback review that'll be coming in a couple of days after the pay-per-view airs, you can check all that out by clicking the subscribe button down there. I appreciate that as well. Now, the next Friday Flashback that will be coming next month will be an interesting one, looking at Bad Blood 1997 in a collaboration with NJ of the British Fist. This should be a good one, because let's see if an Attitude Era precursor can do better than an Attitude Era pay-per-view outright. Then again, 3.5 out of 10 isn't an easy goal to go for, is it? I mean, seriously, it's a low end, it should be able to beat it, and then some. Anyway, guys, I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people listening and or watching, depending on your preference. This has been a Friday Flashback pay-per-view review for the CC Network, and I will see you all next time. Cheers!